You win the sale in the very first meeting. The moment you open the meeting will decide whether you win or whether you lose.
Today we're breaking down the exact structure of a winning first meeting, from the moment you open to the agreed next step.
I've audited hundreds, probably thousands of calls. What we find, Regan, is a lot of initial meetings start with me, right? So it starts with, hey, this is what I do. This is what I sell.
It's a 25-minute journey.
Yeah.
We were at about minute 22 of that journey before you were like, would it help if I introduce myself? Give before you extract.
Because the law of reciprocity is real. When we give something and we don't expect anything in return, the other person will feel obligated to give something back.
If you're in sales and your first meetings feel more like interrogations than a conversation, this episode is for you. Welcome to the Revenue Leaders Podcast.
You win the sale in the very first meeting. The moment you open the meeting will decide whether you win or whether you lose. Now, that's a very controversial statement, Regan.
I think it's true. Like most first meetings start, or they feel like an interrogation. So I would love for us to break down how to make sure we're adding value, not making it feel like that interrogation.
And so what we're going to break down is we've got a mini-series coming up. Another mini-series, our last mini-series was really successful. So we're breaking down another mini-series. Not a mini-series of theory. It's practical, actionable, where some value will be extracted. So stick around to the end where you'll get access. We'll give you access to our community, which is going to have some live coaching and a few other bits and pieces. But we're going to break down the process from initial meeting to a signed contract, and what steps you can do to move the opportunity through that process so that you can win more deals.
Ultimately, that's going to make life a lot easier, isn't it?
Great. And you notice there's just the two of us. Why? Because we're the only ones that can actually win deals.
Because Dave stuffs up first meetings.
Let's get into it.
All right, looking forward to it. So back to my point around, it does feel like an interrogation. I've been on the other side of this. I've signed up for a demo or something, and then I get all of these questions that either should be known already, or they feel like why questions, like I'm almost failing at my job. So how do we make sure that, the person in my seat in that instance gets value out of that first meeting?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think if we bring it back to the earlier statement that we started the episode, right, you either win it in that very first open. And I know that was a bit of a provocative statement, but often what we find, and let me just set the scene for this, is a lot of, and this is coming from a place I've audited hundreds, probably thousands of calls. I've audited face-to-face in real life ones, phone, etc. And what we find, Regan, is a lot of initial meetings start with me, right? So it starts with, hey, this is what I do. This is what I sell. Now, that is it's critically important to share what you do, but it's all about timing and sequencing of when that comes into the conversation.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
It's even, I would love to keep deep diving on this because I even witnessed it. I picked you up this morning on the way to here, and you actually took a sales call in the car, and it's a 25-minute journey.
Yeah.
We were at about minute 22 of that journey before you were like, now, would it help if I introduce myself?
Yeah.
So what happens in that before then?
Yeah, so if we think about the interaction we're having with a prospect, right? So even though it doesn't matter how it's originated, whether it's outbound or whether it's inbound, right? The moment that time gets put into someone's calendar, 90, and there is data to back this up, right? But between 80 to 90% of the people you're about to meet with, they're going to do some diligence on you. They're going to jump online. They'll have a look at your LinkedIn profile. They might go to Google, but they will essentially do a quick search on who you are.
Yeah.
So they'll find out a bit about you. And this is why it's important that you're presenting your brand for when they do that. It showcases exactly what you do, how you do, who you serve, etc. Right? So this is kind of some brand setup, and LinkedIn is probably one of the key ways to do this because that's where they'll see you first. So when they're getting to that meeting, we've got to assume that they've already done a little bit of research on us. And the primary purpose of that meeting is not for me to tell them about me, it's for me to learn a bit about them, right? However, here's the caveat. a great first meeting doesn't just start with, let me learn a bit about you. It's also about earning the right to progress the conversation.
I completely agree.
Yeah. And so often that call that you're referencing, we spoke about it. We spoke about the insight. We spoke about, hey, regardless whether we progress this conversation or not, it's my go-to statement, right? Regardless whether you move forward or not, I want to make sure you're taking away some value from this interaction and some insight on the problem that you're trying to solve. And,
I love that. So
and that's critical, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that to me is you're giving before you're extracting.
100%.
So if we were to break down, like that would be tactic number one.
Yeah.
Look at your first meeting structure. If you look through that and you're asking more than you're giving,
Correct.
Flip it on its head, give before you extract.
And because the law of reciprocity is real.
Yeah.
When we give something and we don't expect anything in return, the other person will feel obligated to give something back, right? So for me, the premise of the first meeting is, yes, we want to establish an element of rapport. People don't buy from people they don't trust. They don't have to like me, but there has to be a level of trust. So by establishing the first conversation and showcasing that, hey, this is, the problem that we're talking about today. This is what we're seeing. We're just dropping a little bit of insight. And again, if we go back to that call that you're referencing, it was, you can do it this way, but without doing C and D, potentially what will happen is it won't deliver the outcome that you're looking for. So what we would advocate is do B, CB in this way because you'll get X, and happy to share some stuff after the call, which she responded, that'd be great. And you know what? I think if you remember her response, it was, yeah, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I was also spoke with somebody else and we were quite underwhelmed. So they're comparing us.
Yeah, already.
Right?
Yeah.
So we look at the buying, the buying journey. They're in deep consideration stage. They're not in that, awareness, thinking about the problem. They're thinking about solutioning. They're thinking about how we're going to fix this problem.
Yeah.
Right?
I love this because so a few things there as well is you've given the insight, but then you go into a consultative frame of mind where you're like, you need to foresee these other considerations that may not be top of mind, but you don't want to go down a path. So that's buyer enablement, consultative selling. I guess the other piece to that is because you've taken that position, there's ultimately trust of that person opening up, giving you, hey, like there's a competitor. What I also love about what you've just said and witnessing it with you is it's like, great. And you actually like lean into it. It's like, great, you should actually be talking to a few different providers on this because you need to see what works for you. So there's no ego there. There's no, I guess, slagging off competitors or anything like that because another thing, don't ever do that. It makes you look insecure.
Yeah.
I guess the other piece to this, and we haven't necessarily covered it off, is structure.
Correct. Yeah.
So how would we break that down?
So obviously there's always an intro. There's a bit of a, hey, nice, great, thanks for jumping on the call. So you always start with that intro. And even before, if you're looking at levels from a state or stages of your initial meeting, the stage 0, what you do before the call is you research them, right? Don't rock up to a call and not have any information about who they are.
Yeah.
Find out where they worked previously. In fact, this particular call, I knew she worked at a previous organization, which I knew somebody else there, and I brought that into the call. Hey, I noticed you worked at, did you know X? Oh, yeah. And all of a sudden, there was a bit of rapport, like it changed the dynamic of the relationship, right? So your research just allows you to understand where they've come from. What potential projects might they have worked on? Have they tackled a problem like this before? There's no point trying to educate someone who could be better at tackling a problem than you, right? So do a little bit of research to establish who they are, where they've come from, what their perspective on the topic could be. And then stage 1 is introduction. It starts the intro. You set the bit of whether you like it or not, there's the camp of set an agenda, don't set an agenda. Regardless, you've got to set a little bit of a tone of what are we going to cover, right?
Yeah, especially for the time that you've got. I think it just helps everyone have a level of understanding of why we're here today because otherwise, and I've seen it on calls where, even the use of certain words. I had this the other day. I was talking to someone about partners and they actually thought I was talking about channel partners.
Yeah.
And so making sure that you're on the same page from like the get-go changes the conversation.
It just sets the tone, sets the structure. And then, look, there's one of two ways. I mean, you don't always have to follow this playbook, to the letter of the law. Depending on where they're at, let them share with you. So in this particular example, I said, hey, we'd love to understand more about why this has become a priority, because this was a inbound inquiry. And then from there, she sort of spoke for the next 15 minutes. And then I just asked some drill down questions through the process. Then once I heard that, I went in and shared a bit of insight, which was the next stage. So insight can be first, then discovery, or discovery, then insight. But at some point, you're going to have to do one of each. And then once we got to that point, I then asked, hey, would you like me to maybe share a bit about how I've helped others and a bit about myself? Yes, bingo. And then there was the next step. So it was having a very clearly defined, agreed next step. And that's, again, something that is often missed. You have a great conversation, but what next? So we had a very clearly defined next step. Yes, you'll send me something before the end of the day. I'll put something together, get it across to you, and I'll come out and meet with you next week. Like we were both agreed.
Yes.
Pardon the interruption. I'm Luigi, one of the co-hosts here at Revenue Leaders. You'll notice we don't run sponsors or ads on Revenue Leaders.
This show is free. Our goal is to help you grow revenue and build your sales system that you can rely on. We do have a favour to ask though.
If this episode gives you one clear idea that you can use, do these two things. First, share it with one person, a founder, a revenue leader, or a rep who wants to grow their business. Just one. That's how the show grows.
Second, grab free access to our vault over at coachpilot.com/vault. Inside, you'll get the frameworks, templates, and short courses we use with clients to help them scale pipeline and increase win rates.
So the deal is simple. If you get value, share the episode with one person and go to coachpilot.com/vault to get the tools to put this into action. All right, let's get back to it.
My email that I'm going to send, because I just haven't had a chance to come to this podcast, is I'm just gonna write those down in an email to say thanks for the chat, blah blah blah. Here are the actions, look forward to, etc. Right now, that's a good first meeting. So the first meeting we've gone through the process of determining problem statement. Is it something we can help with? Now, in some cases, you might be on the call and go, you've got to qualify this out.
Yeah.
Right? Because, and I had this last week. One of the cold calls that we made a few weeks ago, I met with the CEO last week, and during the call, I determined, you know what? They're probably outside of our ICP, not from a firmographic perspective, from a psychographic perspective. So I was like, hang on. There's no point me trying to pursue this because it's not the right fit, right?
Yeah.
I qualified them out. The other cold call that we booked with the other CEO and the chief commercial officer, perfect fit. So we're progressing that opportunity. So the initial meeting is also your time to decide, is this worth chasing? Is this worth me investing more time on, right? So you've got to be assessing that during the call. It's not about having this, huge qualification framework where you're qualifying them in or out, but you're sense checking some stuff. Then if everything works to plan, you're like, yes, this is great. Then you'll go, typically what we do is NX. And you've heard me say this time and time again. I'm very process driven in my first meeting. It's going to the second. And as a way of introduction, this particular opportunity is a land and expand. It is not one where we're going to get the entire pie straight away. We're going to have a process to get this to a larger opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I love that. So the structure essentially helps you in terms of a two-way conversation, not a lecture, either side, or a lecture or interrogation, really. Being able to, I guess, what you're doing there is that knowledge share helps it create that trust. Being able to reflect on where you can create that trust and that reciprocity is like if anyone has understands the 7 laws of influence. It's huge, particularly in those first and early stages. And then obviously, the questions that you help in terms of that uncovering. And I think that like as a part of this mini series, we'll deep dive on those questions as well. So we'll put that as an upcoming episode. But I think that I love that because it also takes the pressure off is that, the less you push in that first meeting, like it helps create and nurture the relationship as well. So it's not saying that no, I'm going to qualify out isn't a no forever. It's that's just going to go in our relationship funnel.
In the event it doesn't meet.
Yeah.
And, again, if we were to map this out, the very clearly defined map of your first meeting, you do your pre-research, which is your stage 0. Stage 1 is you have a bit of an intro and you set the scene for the call. So you're making sure they're aware of what you're going to cover. Next is you either start with an element of discovery, why are we here today, or you lead with insight and you can flip them around. Then once you've gone through that process, you're then starting to share a bit more about how you've helped others like them and you social proof that aspect. And then you get to the point where you're at that, hey, this is a typical next steps, and you close it off. So there's a very clearly defined structure, right? And you don't have to ask 10, 20 questions during that process to determine problem statement and start building out the next level of discovery. So that is your first meeting structure. That is the winning structure to progress the conversation from point A to point B. And then once you get into point B, that is where the power of questions will kick in, which help you truly understand current, future, problem statement, business case, progression. The next episode in our mini-series is all about questions. So we talk about the first meeting structure, moves you into the next stage of the process, which is about really understanding that business case, really building out the value before you even think about presenting. And so we're going to talk about questions that unlock that. But at the start of our podcast, we mentioned giving some value here. So there's a link in the show notes where you can get access to our community. And the community, there's a whole bunch of tools, templates, and we have some live coaching sessions which you can attend. So make sure you click that link. It'll build on this episode, and there are particular templates that link this episode to those templates so that you can really extract value from this podcast.